everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, here today to talk about a graphic novel that was released on October 21st. I have the writer joining me to talk about it, Jared Throne. It's called Bridge, Planet 9, and it's really an awesome heist story. So, Jared, first of all, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really, I'm a sucker for a good heist story. This one is kind of focused on human relationships as well, which is really interesting. I haven't read a heist story quite like this before. A lot of them are kind of focused on the cleverness of, how they're going to pull off the job. This one has a little bit of a different theme. So how do you describe what's kind of the synopsis of the story, and give us a little idea of how you came up with the overall plot?
Sure. Yeah. My basic synopsis is it's four people who are going on a heist, and it's a science fiction story. So they're flying out to kind of a dead colony planet, and basically these are things called bridge planets in this universe, which is where corporations have essentially bought a planet to just rip the natural resources out. So the idea is that they're robbing from a freighter that's flying through that bridge planet. So the appeal for them is that they're going to be in this dead planet. There'll be no one around for millions of miles. Should be easy peasy. Of course, that's not quite how it ends up going. But in terms of inspiration, I love science fiction. I love a lot of crime stories and things like that. I think putting it in a science fiction setting is really fascinating, and I really liked the idea of having them be in a universe that's kind of a sci-fi future thing, but then they travel to essentially like a dystopian world, and it's in a sense, but it's not really like their whole universe. They're kind of fish out of water in that way. And I don't know. I just think there's something really interesting about that. And I think what's fascinating to me about a lot of heist stories is you end up kind of, from the beginning of the story, it's like they're not great people, but you're still going to root for them. They're the heroes of the story, and I think there's just something really interesting about immediately connecting with kind of this moral gray area before you even turn the first page.
Yeah, it is one of the things that I love about heist stories as well, right? Because you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about this moral gray area, but yet they're the protagonists. We won't go so far as to call them heroes, but they're the protagonists of the story. You are rooting for them to kind of make it. And what's interesting, we won't give it away. We want you guys to read it. But when push comes to shove and they have to make some decisions between possibly completing the job or doing something a little more altruistic. Again, they kind of prove that underneath it all, they're good people, or at least some of them are. So I thought that was a really interesting choice as well. They're not completely motivated by greed. Even the main character, Garrett, who's the one that originally comes up with the idea. He used to, you mentioned these bridge planets being owned by companies. He worked for the kind of the largest company in this universe, so he's kind of the inside man, if you will. And for him, it's more of kind of a revenge job. He took the blame for something that another corporate overlord did that was against the law. So when you were coming up with the actual team, and everybody kind of has their role, which is traditional in heist stories. But talk a little bit about the character dynamics. Coming up with everybody's role, but also their interactions and how they were going to play off each other. Did you kind of know what those dynamics were going to be, right from the start, or did it change at all organically as you were building the story, that sort of thing?
Some of it changed a little bit. There's two characters that are siblings, and that was that wasn't my original plan. I kind of needed more connection between them. Because it's just, I don't know, it's more interesting when some of the characters have a history together, before you get there. But generally speaking, yeah, you're totally right. Heist stories in particular, I mean, you can just Google like heist story cast, and there's like very common tropes, right? For like a mastermind and like a lot key master type person and a getaway driver. So I try to take those concepts and change them into like sort of a futuristic version, right? So instead of a getaway driver, she's like a spaceship pilot now. And then the other thing that I did that was really helpful is I just kind of did a little mini deep dive into just why people steal anything ever. Like why do people think it's okay to take something? And you already mentioned some of those reasons, right? It's revenge. It's I didn't get what I'm earned. It's a desperation thing, right? Maybe you just need them. There's no other way to get what you need. Um, and I think diving into those kind of common, very broad approaches to why people feel okay with doing something that we would all generally say is amoral or not okay, I think kind of quickly created some interesting connections between them of how does somebody who's doing this for maybe kind of a desperation reason interact with somebody who's doing this for a revenge version reason, and probably not well, right? Like those aren't the same type of people, and so I think that kind of organically sprung a lot of interesting interactions and dynamics between the characters, but also gave them like really unique personalities. It doesn't feel like a copy and paste of four different people.
Yeah, and it is interesting because I think over time, certainly in modern time, the heist story has taken on a little bit of a different connotation. I feel like you're making this heist story or telling this same story. It doesn't even necessarily have to. We don't have to put that label on it. But if we're telling a story like in the late 50s or early 60s, then maybe we're rooting for them to fail, or maybe there would be another character that was kind of chasing after them, right? Like a law enforcement, and that would be the person that supposedly we're supposed to identify and root for. You bring that to modern times with everything that's going on, in the world and what have you, and so many people struggling. It really has kind of flipped to the other side because we're so much more aware in our everyday life of these giant mega corporations or these billionaires that have so much, right? Like the wealth inequity of the modern world makes it so much easier to understand desperation or what have you. I find that to be really interesting because we do find out that things on this planet are not exactly what we were told or what we thought or even what the heist team thought. And you want to talk about people that are kind of desperate or maybe deserve something better, that's the situation. And so it's much easier to identify. I think the haves and have-nots is really an interesting social aspect of the story. So, it's not kind of the overt, you don't hit us over the head with it, which I, appreciate. It's not preachy.
Sure.
But it is there. And so I imagine, thematically that was something you wanted to kind of start a conversation about.
Yeah, totally. I think the main thing that I kind of thought through or clung to a lot was just sort of like how beat up can you get before it's okay to do something that's dishonest or immoral,
Right.
or when like how down and out and just against the odds can you be before somebody goes, I get it, just steal it, like whatever, or other things like you said. And I think the heist team is that way. They're all kind of beaten down in their own life to a degree, but as you move through some of the other characters that pop up in the book, I think that is kind of a common theme, is they're all kind of, nobody really deserves in a sense where they are in this story. It's just sort of what happened to them, and now they're trying to deal with what comes next and how to cope with it, how to move forward. And like you said, that's a feeling I think people relate to and can connect with, and it's certainly a wide variety of responses as well for people who will never do something that they consider immoral to people who kind of immediately do it if they get pushed back. So, I think there's an interesting dialogue there, and it certainly ties into exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I don't think it's hard to read this book and read into like some thoughts on mega corporations and corporate control and those types of things. So that's certainly a theme as well. And pretty common theme with science fiction too, which is probably part of why I love it so much. It's a little punk rock.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you're just taking something to survive, which again you put it in the science fiction context of space or some kind of harsh environment where your literal survival is so tenuous, it raises the stakes, raises the drama of the story. But man, I'm just trying to get a little crumb to get along, and I'm stealing from this faceless corporation that has more than they ever could possibly need or want. It's
Yeah.
like, come on, man, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, yeah. There's a line in the book of something like, "If we do this right, they won't even know for months, right?
Right.
Anything's gone." And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how big this company is.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it'd be like some sort of a tax write-off for them.
Totally.
It really is a victimless crime. Well, the other aspect, you not only wrote it, you're the illustrator as well.
Yeah.
It's black and white, and you have a little bit of a simple style. This isn't something where it's science fiction and it's super detailed or whatever. But I think using a simpler style, it really allowed the humanity of the story to kind of shine through. So again, I mean, not that you necessarily adapted your style for this. This is just kind of what your style is.
Sure.
But I think it does lend to that type of storytelling. So, in terms of character designs and what have you, did you kind of have an idea as you were building out the story of exactly what these characters were going to look like, or was there a little back and forth amongst your kind of writer illustrator self to kind of get the designs right of what you wanted both the characters and the planet Bridge Planet 9 to look like?
Yeah. The characters took a few rounds. I mean, I especially when I'm doing like initial ideas, I draw a lot of concepts and ideas kind of as I go. Because sometimes that art can inspire what you're writing too, right? You draw
Right.
somebody, you
Yeah.
go, oh, this looks like somebody would be, this way or that way. But once they got locked in, I was pretty happy with it. The girl who's on the cover there, Pearl, I really liked her outfit a lot. And this is also a story where like I don't know, maybe like 80 or 90% of the book is in one night. So like once I had the look, that's what I'm gonna draw that over and over again. And of course I did hundreds of times. So I wanted to be really happy with their outfits, but I think it showed some personality and that kind of thing too. Uh, yeah, so kind of hand in hand. In terms of the planet, I really wanted to there's a couple of like intentional decisions, but generally speaking, I wanted it to just look like a bombed out world that just been wrecked.
Hmm.
Again, it's a former colony planet. It explains in the book pretty early on, this isn't like a huge spoiler, that it was essentially like a midpoint in this kind of big war that happened years ago and just got wrecked and destroyed and bombed out. And so yeah, I like that environment. I think it's a nice reflection of some of the themes and some of the things happening in the story, and it's a lot of fun to draw a bunch of busted up buildings all the time. You get some freedom to just break windows or be like, hey, I don't want to draw the rest of this wall. I'm just gonna tear it down. So
Yeah, there's a little comedic relief in the book as well, everybody. And again, we don't want to spoil, but one of the characters, Wes, has an accessory, we'll call it, that's a little comedic relief, which I appreciated. And it must have been kind of fun to write that dialogue.
yeah.
But we won't talk about it more than that because I don't want to give it away. But in terms of the kind of the voices, the vocabulary, what have you, of the four main characters, was there anyone that was like super easy for you that you maybe identified with more, and anyone that was kind of on the other end of the spectrum that was a little tougher, maybe took more than a few passes to kind of get it exactly as you wanted?
Um, I don't think so. I get when I'm writing dialogue, I I don't know. I don't know about other people. I feel like a lot of times you make art that's kind of just an inversion of your insecurity. You're like, I really don't want to do X, Y, Z. And I think one of the things that I get insecure about with dialogue is that everybody sounds exactly the same.
Mm.
So I try to really set up. I usually write like literally like a two-sentence description of how I think they would talk. Like it's very specific. Like this person just got dumped at a date, and like this is how they're going to talk for the whole book. But there's also definitely some personal people that come to mind, especially like, I've worked for big companies and stuff. And so somebody who used to be a CFO or a VP at a company, I feel like I know what those guys generally sound like, and was pretty easy to identify. I will say Wes was fun because I kind of just wanted to write somebody who was completely oblivious to like how offensive he was being all the time or
Yeah.
how like she like just did not care, did not check in. And the funny part is like I know those people and like they're not always fun to hang out with. But a lot of the people, especially when I was making the book and sending it to my friends and stuff, they're like, I really like this West guy. He's cool. And I was like, really? I kind of like intentionally trying to make him sound like a jerk a little bit. And everybody's like, no, I like that. He's like really straightforward and honest all the time. And I'm like, okay. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, they're all interesting in their own ways because they all, kind of have their priorities. Garrett, the one that worked for the corporation, he's a little more singularly focused on the mission. And again, for him,
Yeah.
it's revenge as well, so you can kind of understand. But it leads to consequences later down the line, which is interesting as well. Well, I mentioned the book is out now. Everybody, it came out on October 21st, so it's available. You can order it through your comic shop. You can get it from Amazon, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It hasn't been out for a long time, Jared. But have you had any feedback? Can you give us any idea of how it's been received so far?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten mostly positive feedback. I don't have people coming up to my table telling me how awful it was or anything. But it has been cool to see some reviews come in. It got a star Booklist review recently, which is like really fantastic and something I'm really proud of. But yeah, I've been hearing good things. A lot of people like the little accessory you mentioned. I hear that often, so I've been I've been drawing the little robot in the book when I sign it at shows and stuff. But it's been really really fun to see people read it and give me feedback or read reviews. I think maybe what a lot of people who aren't making books, especially like full graphic novels, aren't connecting with sometimes is like these take a long time to draw. This was not something that I released like online previously or anything. So there was no like public way to read this book at all until it just came out. So it's a lot of sitting on your work for a while. So to hear people's feedback and have them read it and appreciate it and be excited about it, it means a lot when you've been kind of waiting and craving for somebody to check it out and be like, did I make something that was okay? Is this actually good? So yeah, it's been great to hear stuff, and I'm excited to keep it going.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because a lot of times, as you mentioned or kind of alluded to, yeah, you're as you're working because it does take so long, and maybe you need a little bit of a revenue stream or what have you. People are putting up pages on Patreon or what have you.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, and as you also alluded to, it's such a solitary job, comics. You're kind of working in a vacuum, so to have it
yeah,
out there, I'm sure, kind of a little bit of trepidation on that, first day that it's released. How is it going to be received? But also just glad to have it kind of out in the world.
yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Well, I would definitely recommend it. Everybody out there in the audience, whether you're checking us out on YouTube or listening to audio only, again, Bridge Planet 9. It's available on places like Amazon, or you can order it from your local comic shop. Great for kind of middle-age readers as well. Kind of young adult or what have you. We mentioned both Jared and I about how it can start conversations about the haves and the have-nots, which I think are important conversations to have. Make a great Christmas gift if you're trying to get a younger reader in your family interested in comics or what have you, or just a younger person interested in reading. This is something you can read like as a bedtime story and that kind of thing. It's not bloody, it's not gory, there's not a lot of horrible language or what have you. So I think it really is for all ages and is a good story to share. So and the other thing that I want to mention is it is a complete story. You don't leave us on some
Mhm.
crazy cliffhanger. Not that you couldn't go back to this world to tell other stories in this universe you've created, Jared, but it really is a complete and satisfying story. So anything else you want to share with our audience as we're kind of winding down here?
Um, no, thank you for having me on here. I'm really excited about this book. I think something that I've said a few times to people is, I've been given advice or heard advice often that you should be making books and art that you would buy, that you would want to read. And I definitely feel this way about this book. I would absolutely buy this book off the shelf and be excited to read it. So hopefully that's how you guys feel if and when you pick it up and check it out. And yeah, if you read it, if you're hearing this and you read it, hit me up on Instagram or something. Let me know. I'd love to hear from people about what they're thinking about the stories and the comics.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my last question. The best place to follow you online for your work
Hmm.
and what have you. So Instagram, you said?
Yeah, I'm definitely the most active on Instagram. And there's a lot of like concept art and other things, process stuff. If you're into that, I post a lot of that kind of thing. So yeah, you can find me there.
And is the handle just your name?
Yeah, it's just Jared_Throne. My last name makes me pretty searchable. Comes right up, for better or worse.
Great. Well, I'll put a link to Jared's Instagram in the show notes, everybody. So if you're having trouble finding him, you can just go and click there. So again, Jared, thanks so much for sharing the book with me and for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for checking it out. Thanks for having me on.
And again, to everybody out there in the audience, whether you're checking us out on YouTube or the audio only, we really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you next time.